All right, so let's take a look at the map that you have. All right. And what I'm going to do is use this map right here so that you can fill out your map. All right. And I might go back and forth. I don't know a better way to do this, but so look at your map first. And it asks you for trans-Saharan trade routes. All right. So you see those arrows that are going down? That is your trans-Saharan trade routes. Okay. Trans-Saharan trade routes are those arrows. And what they traded on these trade routes was salt and gold. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go along. But this is the Sahara Desert up here. So the trans-Saharan trade routes are those arrows that go down, almost like they're shooting down. All right, on your map, it's a little bit shaded up here, but this is the Nile River. The Nile River. All right. All right, so whenever I look at this map, and you will have to be able to find this stuff on the test and the quiz, whenever I look at this map, if I'm looking for Axum, which is your circle there, okay, this area right here is Axum. All right, it's located in the Ethiopian highlands. All right, and whenever I want to look for it, it's the one Christian kingdom that we talk about, and it's close to this right here, which is called the Horn of Africa. It looks like a horn that is sort of jutting out into the Indian Ocean, okay? So the Horn of Africa. I think about Ethiopian highlands, but right there, that circle that you have over here by this horn is going to be Axum. All right, you go down south a little bit. We're gonna tackle the trading kingdoms here in a second, but if you're looking for the Zambezi River, this is it right here. Now on the map you have, it's going to be tough to find this. That map's not the best, but it kind of shows you that river that goes around. Make sure you put that up here. I'm not going to ask you this on a test, but it is important to know. If you look directly below that circle, you'll find the Limpopo River. And the circle that's in between that is Zimbabwe. Okay, Zimbabwe. All right. All right, now one of the tougher ones to find in here too is located right here. It is the Niger River, that flows this way. I don't care. You can just post it over here somewhere and put like, whatever you got to do. This is going to be tough to type in on yours, but I want you to look at it this way. The little bitty one here, that little bitty circle on yours, all right, that is going to be Ghana. And then the one that's slightly bigger, right around here, okay, this area here, okay, is Mali. And then the largest area is Songhai. Now, it's hard to put all that in. The city of Timbuktu is right there, that dot on your map. Just do the best you can putting that in. I realize it's probably not the best map. Now, I put this map on there that you can reference on today's module, so you can reference this. But in general, I want you to look at this map because it helps you. You will be responsible for these. I'm not going to make it hard. I know they're all located here in the same spot. You do need to know where Axum is, the Nile, and Zimbabwe. And you need to know the trans-Saharan trade routes go through the Sahara Desert. So let me bring it up if I can. So you have this area here, the arrows right here, you would put trans-Saharan trade routes. All right, here's the Nile River right here. Okay, in this little shaded area, you can put Nile. Then you have Aksum right here, the Christian kingdom. There's the Horn of Africa. All right, this river right here, the Zambezi. Down here, you have the Limpopo. And right here in this circle is Zimbabwe. Here you will have the Niger River. This little circle will be, and I can already tell how it's going to be. Just do the best you can on this part. You're going to have Mali, Ghana, and Songhai. Okay, in these areas. I know it's going to be tough to put. Just put all of them in there, and just refer to the other map if you know if that's difficult. I won't hold that against you on this map. Okay, and that should clear off the map. Who's sending me a chat here? Egypt. All right, Egypt. Whoops, that's a good question. No, I didn't mean to do that. Egypt is located right here in that shaded area by the Nile. Okay, by the Nile. This is Egypt. The city of Timbuktu, you can't see the dot in here, just put it right about right there. Okay, Timbuktu is located about right here. And if I could draw on this, it would be easier, but Timbuktu is located in, you know, what is Mali, Songhai, Ghana, Mali and Songhai right in there. All right, so you should have that done. Now we're going to switch to the classwork for today, and it's just a basic chart. I'm going to tell you what to put in that chart as we go along. All right, so we are talking about Africa today. I'm not going to go over the review questions because we just don't have a whole lot of time. Some people are already turning in the Africa map. Very good. All right, essential understanding. States and empires flourished in Africa during the medieval period, including Aksum in East Africa, West African, I guess what you would almost say city-states, okay, Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, and then in South Africa you have Zimbabwe. All right, so Aksum, what you're going to put under Aksum on your worksheet that should say something like African classwork, whatever. Here's what you put. Aksum. Aksum is located here, and this is another good way that could help you with the map. All right, here's your Nile River Valley. Down below that, you have the Christian kingdom of Aksum. All right, near the Ethiopian highlands. Aksum is a Christian kingdom. That's what you really need to know. All right, location near the Nile, near the Ethiopian highlands, and a Christian kingdom. King Azana of Aksum conquered the Kush or Nubia and grew wealthy from controlling trade. What they're going to ask you on the test and the quiz is what was the Christian kingdom? It was Aksum. They're going to ask you for the location. Okay, they're going to ask you for the location. So while you're putting that in, give you a couple of minutes to get that in. All right, and look, you don't have to put the history. That's not going to be on anything. I'm not going to do that, Azana. So don't worry about the history. Just put the location and the Christian kingdom. Okay. All right, I'm going to move along. All right, so where you see Zimbabwe, what you need to know about Zimbabwe, and this is really important, the location near the Zambezi and Limpopo rivers. All right, on the coast of the Indian Ocean. You can see it right here. Knowing where the Zambezi is, knowing where the Limpopo is going to help you locate that. The city of Great Zimbabwe is the capital. That's what you need to put in there, just those two things. It did reach its peak in power in the 1400s. The remnants were destroyed by the Portuguese in the 1500s. All right. This video is not going to work. Oh, there it goes.
The Greek legacy remains constant. Until the age of exploration, nowhere was more shrouded in mystery than Africa. For centuries, its shores teemed with traders from around the world, bartering silks and spices for precious ivory and gold. Few outsiders ever ventured beyond its coast, and the origin of Africa's...
That's not working out too well. Anyway, so what you got to put in for the West African kingdoms, Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. Look here. This is tough. The way they got the maps, it's always confusing. But just know that Timbuktu is right here in this area in the west. Okay. Their next two are on the Niger River, near and part of the Sahara Desert. They were very important for trans-Saharan trade. This is actually a pretty good map, actually. You look right here, you got the Nile. Here's Axum. There's the Horn. There's Zambezi. Limpopo, they don't have, is down here. Here's the Sahara Desert. And then you got, what it was, Nubia. Axum is up here. That'd be a little confusing, but Ghana is this, I guess what little broken dot area. Mali is this larger area. I don't know, maybe that's a little confusing too. There you see that map again, if that map helps you a little bit. All right, so other things you have to put for the West African kingdoms. So I would just put this: Mansa Musa, king of Mali, increased wealth by opening trade routes. So trans-Saharan trade routes are really going to become important, because on these routes, people traded gold for salt. Now, I know what a lot of people are thinking: salt. Salt's that stuff that comes in the salt shaker. That's right. Back then, salt was as valuable as gold. It was one of the most valuable commodities, especially to like Europeans who wanted to preserve meat or flavor their food in some cases. Now, you don't have to put the pilgrimage to Mecca, but it's important to know that Mansa Musa, who was a king of Mali, made a pilgrimage to Mecca for the Hajj. He was Muslim. And as he went into different places, he kind of ruined their economies, because he put so much gold into the population that they actually, or he actually sort of crashed their economy and caused a lot of what we consider inflation. Okay. You do need to know they were Islamic, but they also believed in animal worship, which is called animism. So they believed that spirits would reside in animals, and in some cases they worship animals. They were very, how do you say it, literal people. They thought that because the animals were important, the animals had their own souls, and a lot of the animals were sacred, and so they did worship animals. You do need to know the West African kingdoms. The city of Timbuktu is a center of learning and trade. Okay, the Timbuktu is the most important African city. A lot of older people used to say stuff like, yeah, we had to ride all the way to Timbuktu. And I used to think Timbuktu wasn't real, but it is. Okay, if you ever hear somebody say, well, that's in Timbuktu, meaning it's far away. Timbuktu is a real place. And it was an important city of learning and trade for the West African kingdoms and Africa in general. All right, everybody good with that? All right, moving along. Don't worry about any of this, putting this in there. It's just a little background information. They're just going to ask you about trans-Saharan trade, Timbuktu, all that stuff. Songhai broke away from Mali and replaced it as the most powerful kingdom in West Africa. Askia Muhammad was the greatest ruler of Songhai. He was a zealous Muslim. He developed legal system based on the Quran. One thing you do need to know about Timbuktu, capital of Mali, home of Mansa Musa. Muslims from all of West Africa came to the city to study at the universities at Timbuktu. So you do have to know that, you know, Muslim city, a great trade city, you know, capital of Mali, big for trade, education, those type of things that would go on there. Mansa Musa had so much gold, he was so rich, and whenever he went somewhere, it was interesting because we'll watch maybe a you know, a quick video of him, and you'll see he really was generous, but at the same time, he was kind of harmful to the economies of these places. All right, so what were some factors that contribute to European exploration? Here is why Europeans were interested, right here. It's the gold salt trade. Ghana, Mali, and Songhai have lots of gold. That's what Europeans want. They want gold. And they needed to preserve food, so they needed salt. North Africans had salt, okay, wanted to use gold as money. Reason Europeans wanted this, all you got to do is put gold salt trade. That's why they explored Africa for resources. I won't have a question of that on there. But you got to understand that, you know, one thing about the gold salt trade here, people still today, if you look at a salt shaker, you go, well, you know, that was worth a lot of money back in the day. Of course, it's not worth anything anymore because we know how to make it, you know, by using chemicals. We can make it without having to mine it. Back then, they mined salt. And in some places, they still do, but they can actually produce salt now because of the chemical compound that's in salt. So back then, to get salt, you had to mine it. So North Africans had the salt. They wanted gold to use as money. People would cross the Sahara Desert. You know, crossing a desert, I've actually had an experience where I was in a desert. It's actually the Mojave Desert. When I was in the Army, we used to have to go to this thing called NTC, National Training Center. It's in the middle of the Mojave Desert. And the desert is a crappy place. It's beyond, it's like extremes. Extreme dry heat in the day and extreme cold at night where, you know, it's really cold. You know, when you wake up in the morning, you got to shake out your boots to make sure there's no scorpions or anything in there. When sandstorms come, it's awful. You know, if you don't have shelter and the sand's hitting you in the eyes and the face, it's pretty bad. Harsh environment, but people made money, okay, off of salt and gold, you know, if they wanted salt. So they would actually travel across the desert, and they used camels. Camels, you know, stored water, so you could ride a camel. A horse didn't do well in the desert because there's no water for the horse. So you definitely used camels and things like that for the gold salt trade. And your map shows you a little bit better of that gold salt trade. I'm going to move along because I got one more thing and then we're done and we're just going to SOL review. We're going to look at Japan here. If I can find it.
Can you go back to Zimbabwe really quick? I have one thing that I missed.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do that for you. There you go.
All right, I got it.
All right. So Japan, I had Japan already up here. There it is. Japan. And I'm going to go over this quickly. If you look at Japan, Japan's always fascinating to me because, you know, this small group of islands here had a large influence on, you know, the much larger places over here, and especially when you think about Japan and China, they sort of go hand in hand. One thing, the Koreans, Korean Peninsula, Japan, you'll learn that they, right before World War II, they invaded, you know, China, North Korea, South Korea, what was all the Koreas back then, the Korean Peninsula. But Japan's one of those places where I kind of hold it. It has a special place in my heart because of the MMA thing and fighting and stuff like that. Japanese culture is really fascinating to me. I do find it interesting, and we'll look at a video. Hopefully, we'll look at a video of, you know, the weird weather that they have there, because they're really a group of islands called an archipelago, and you know they just, it's just a unique, really unique culture. Japan consists of thousands of islands, but there's 4 main islands. It's an archipelago here in the Pacific Ocean. And because of its location, it's sort of a weird thing. You know, you have a lot of earthquakes and things like that, which lead to even worse things like tsunamis. Japan is very mountainous. Only a small part can be used for farming. They have like limited natural resources. One of the reasons that we went to war with Japan, or Japan went to war with us in World War II, is because we provided them with oil. And then we were like, well, they're kind of the bad guys, you know, they're allies with the Axis powers, which were Germany, Italy, and Japan. So we're kind of like, we're not going to give y'all oil anymore. And then they attacked us at Pearl Harbor. You know, they definitely invaded other countries like, you know, China, Russia, Korea, to really, I guess what you would say, exploit them for their natural resources. You know, whenever I think about Japan, I do think about the tsunami that happened there. There's a show on Netflix called Unsolved Mysteries, and they look at the spirits, and we're going to talk about that here in a minute, that a lot of people, cab drivers, experience people who get in their car and then they disappear. It's like weird. And the cab drivers are, to me, they're weird too, because they pay the fare. They think they've been driving a spirit around, so they pay the fare. But anyway, you can watch that on Netflix, but it's just interesting to me. Under Kublai Khan, I tried to name my kid Kublai Khan Asbury, and my wife wouldn't go for it. But Kublai Khan was, I think, the grandson of Genghis Khan, and you know, he tried to conquer Japan. Really, what you got to know about the Japanese is Japanese believed in gods or nature spirits called kami, spirits in the sand, the waterfalls, the trees. Many of the clans trace their origin to these spirits. This religion is called Shinto. Okay, Shintoism is the main religion of Japan, and it is really only found really in Japan. Okay, Shintoism is one of those religions that is based on the kami, you know, the worship of the spirits, and it is unique to Japan. Okay. Japan had a feudal society. If you ever, one of the greatest movies that's ever been made is The Last Samurai, and it basically shows you this sort of thing in action, the feudalism of Japanese, I guess what you would say, emperor. The emperor was not powerful. He didn't call the shots. It would be the shoguns who called the shots. They were the ones who were really in charge. controlled the military finances and the laws. Basically all you're going to have to know about Japan is really Shintoism, Zen Buddhism, archipelago, so it's not much. Daimyos were wealthy landlords who had most of the real power. They were responsible for running the business of daily life. And then you get to probably the more fascinating people. The samurai are always like the coolest, in my opinion, most respectful warriors out of all of them. And you got to think about knights. Basically the same thing. They were hired by the daimyos, given land, and they basically would give loyalty and protection to the lords. Okay. Now, what makes them a little bit more unique is they had the same sort of code that you would find that a lot of the knights would have. It's called Bushido in Japanese culture. So it's very similar sort of premise here. It's feudal society. These are the warriors who protect the powerful lords, the samurai. Bushido is the samurai's code of behavior. It stressed bravery, loyalty, and honor. And one of the things I love about it, even in Japanese society today, and you don't have shoguns, but this sort of belief system is passed down. So a lot of times you watch fights in Japan, and they're a lot different than they are in the United States. For example, in Japan, there was a huge show called Pride Fighting Championships. And a lot of the Japanese fighters weren't very good fighters, but if they showed courage and bravery, then they were invited back, even if they lost a few times. As long as you showed courage and you kind of went out on your shield and you fought as hard as you could and you fought well, the Japanese fans and the Japanese promoters really respected that. So they would bring those people back, even though they were like, a lot of people were like, well, those guys aren't very good fighters. A lot of the Japanese go out on their shield. And what I mean by that is, there was a famous fight between, one of my instructor's cousin, Rickson Gracie. And what he did was he was fighting this Japanese guy, and the refs let the Japanese guys basically almost die in there. They don't stop the fight if the guy's getting bludgeoned. And, Rickson gets this Japanese guy, Yamamoto. He gets him in what's called the rear naked choke. Now, armbar and stuff like that, guys can fight it off. But when you put a choke on a person, like a real choke, not like, a windpipe choke, it cuts off the blood to the brain and you pass out. You're going to go out. If the choke's in, you're going out. And one of the craziest things is Rickson had the guy in the choke, and the referee didn't stop it. And so Rickson realized he had choked his opponent unconscious, so he just got up and walked away. And the guy was laying there like he was taking a nap. So when I think about that, you go, well, good Lord, that's crazy. Why not just tap out? Well, a lot of the Japanese, they didn't want to tap out. They'd just rather get their arm broke, or they'd rather get choked unconscious than to surrender or give up. And that's part of the samurai way. They did not fear death. If they displeased their masters or were defeated in battle, they would practice seppuku, the ceremonial suicide, which was a way to avoid dishonor. And in the movie The Last Samurai, they actually have a scene like this that you see on the right. What they would do is, and I never forget, when I was teaching a jiu-jitsu class, I had a ninja come in. Ninja was like the peasant version of a samurai. They acted a little bit, in the samurai's view, they acted dishonorably. They were sneaky and they would hide and you couldn't see them. And they used throwing, they used all kinds of different weapons. But the guy brought me a samurai sword, Okay, and it has the samurai sword and a little bitty sword that goes with it. And so the little sword is for this, it's seppuku. And if the samurai had dishonored himself, okay, he would commit a ceremonial suicide, which was a way to avoid dishonor. And in the movie, the guy does this first, and what the samurai would do is they would take this sword and stick it into their stomach and then cut to the side and up, and it was like ritual disembowelment. You know, their guts would spill out. If they had someone there with them, or the person who defeated them, to help them keep honor, that person would then cut their head off to sort of finish them in a honorable way. So the Japanese, and look, that's why when you think about World War II, I always think about, you know, the kamikazes. What were the kamikazes? They were suicide pilots who would fly their planes into, you know, ships and stuff like that. I always thought that was a strange thing because in warfare, you know, that's kind of it's not the smartest tactic because what you're doing is wasting two resources. You're wasting the person that's in the plane and then the plane itself, which you got to build another plane to replace it after you know, purposely fly it into some sort of ship. But it goes back to this samurai time, though, you know, that death was a way to avoid dishonor. Shintoism would, I guess what you would say, coexist with Zen Buddhism. Zen Buddhism taught salvation through enlightenment, not faith, and they practiced self-discipline through hours of meditation. There you see a Zen garden, arranged rocks and trees, and water to represent nature. All right, so I'm going to, oh, no, that's not what I wanted to do. Let me, I just want to stop.